This is passage 4. It's a research passage in 67C. And with research passages, you're going to read RR. You're not going to read carefully, just enough to know the differences between the studies or processes, and get the questions as quickly as you can. You might want to skim the reading if it helps you to understand. You have time. We know this is research because it says experiment 1 and experiment 2. So in experiment 1, they're adding a solution to a flask and measure the conductivity. Looks like you have conductivity, volume of titrant added. Experiment 2 is repeated, except that acetic acid is the solution. So volume of titrant added and conductivity. And it looks like we have keys that say it turns different colors. So different colors in each one. So then you can move to the questions. You kind of have a basic idea of what's going on. Our approach to the questions is the R and R approach. So you're going to read the question and then reread the question. So in your first reading, you're just trying to understand what it's asking, kind of orienting yourself, skimming, if you will. And then your reread, you're really breaking it down step by step. So as we go through it, I'm going to be doing the reread part. Already read it. Hopefully you've already read it and we're rereading. If you haven't read it before we start, pause the video and read it before we start. Number 18 in experiment 1, so put your finger on experiment 1. The sample solution was yellow, so yellow is where it's going to be, at which the following value. So anything from 0 to 1 is yellow, so that means 0.8 F. Number 19 in experiment 2, put your finger on experiment 2. The sample solution was neutral at which the following values for the volume of titrant added. So it tells you all solutions were aqueous, an acid-base indicator was used, it's yellow if the pH is less than 6, blue if its pH is greater than 7. So that means at 1, it's where it's green, right? Yellow and blue make green. It's where it's mixed. So the answer would be 1. Because if it's yellow or blue, it's not neutral. That's the most common knowledge question on the ACT. This one isn't really knowledge, it tells you what it is, but that is the most common knowledge question on the ACT when it's something basic and acidic. So B. This is an if, suppose, why question in experiment 1, finger on experiment 1. If 2.3 milliliters of the titrant had been added, so 2.3 is going to be over here. I'm going to kind of continue that line. The sample solution, the conductivity would most likely have been, so it's going to be up above 4.5 somewhere, so greater than 3.8, so J. Okay, number 21 is actually a pretty tricky question. In experiment 2, so finger on experiment 2, which solution was the titrant and which solution was the sample solution? And it says acetic acid solution was used instead of the HCl solution. But what does that mean? We still don't know which one it was. We got to go back to experiment 1. And it tells us actually in the introduction how to distinguish between these two. The titrant is added incrementally to a known volume of a sample solution. So, and then in experiment 1, NaOH was slowly added to the HCl. So the HCl is the titrant in experiment 1. Acetic acid is used instead in experiment 2, and NaOH was added to both. So NaOH is the titrant, and acetic acid is the sample solution in experiment 2. That's actually a lot to process in a short time. That's why practicing these tests helps you to know how to break down material fairly quickly. In experiments 1 and 2, the probe most likely did what? So it tells us in experiment 1, the probe measures conductivity. And you know conductivity is electrical, so electrical current, choice J. It's a tricky question. You got to think about it a bit. A chemist claimed that in experiment 2, so put your finger on experiment 2, the pH. So pH, if something is less than 7, it's acidic, greater than 7, it's basic or alkaline. The pH of the sample solution was greater at 0.2. So we know it tells us if it is yellow, it has a pH less than 6. If it is blue, it has a pH greater than 7. So they claimed the pH was greater at a value of 0.2, and that is not true. You don't really know if it's acid or basic. It's just the pH is higher at that level. So the answer is no. At a value of 0.2, it was yellow. That is true. And 1.8, it was blue. You could process of eliminate some of these other ones as well and just say which ones do not say what's true. So for example, in choice B, it says at 0.2 the sample was blue, and that's not true. At 0.2 it's yellow. So you can use that way to process of eliminate some of them. So your answer is A.